Hello, welcome to the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. I am your host, Roy Kessel, and today we are very excited to have with us special guest, Patti Brady. Patti is the founder and CEO of Koterra, and she's going to tell us about the amazing work that they do on concussions and brain health. And Patti, that's such a big, important area, so thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Roy. I appreciate being invited, and I'm excited to talk to you today.
So we're going to spend most of the time diving into that work, but we always start with, when you look back as a young girl, what excited you about sports? What drew you to the sports environment?
So I was one of five. I was the baby, and I had everybody in my family played three sports. My dad was a coach. He played sports, and then he became a coach. So when I came along, it was like they made me try every sport. And when I was like 7, 8 years old, I was trying everything, and I did not like a lot of them. I swam. I was a competitive swimmer very early on. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the spirit of a team and all of that. But when I turned 12, I went from 5 feet tall to 5'9" in 1 year. And I started playing volleyball, and that became my sport. Very competitive. I was moved up to varsity when I was in 8th grade. They used to bus me over to the high school. And my dad and my mom said, we can't afford to send 5 kids through college. So you got to figure out your way. So that's when I decided I was going to get a full ride, work my butt off to try and get into D1 school and play volleyball. And I worked very hard. And along the way, I was captain for 3 years in high school. And then at college, I played for Lehigh University D1. And I was the captain there for 3 years as well. So a lot of my personality comes from being in sports. So never giving up, constantly going after what you believe in, go after the fight. It's been a great career, and I'm glad I learned a lot through that to apply to the rest of my life.
Well, sports have that power, right? And you see that. So tell us a little bit more about how you used that sports background to kind of transition into your professional career in life and launch your nonprofit.
So one of the things that I learned early on when I was when I was on the varsity at high school, I was being like hazed a lot because I was this young girl taking spots from the seniors and the juniors. And I had to really learn how to pull a team together, how to work around those attitudes and turn it into something that we could apply to the game. So working with them, and then in college as well, leading a team where you had to pull everyone together every time because there was always something else going on in their lives, but needing them to focus, keeping them mission focused, allowed me to take that into my career, which I ended up going into supporting the Department of Defense. I worked as a defense contractor my entire career for 35 years. And what I learned while playing volleyball, and then I also coached for a while a college team, was finding that one thing that brings everyone together so you can go forward with your mission. And the strength of that really paid off. And that's when I had started another nonprofit building tiny homes for homeless veterans in Maryland. Brought that whole mission together, worked hard, pulling in volunteers who are also focused on that mission and capitalizing on what can everybody bring to the table. Everybody's got a skill that they can bring to the table. So I honed in on that, and that's stuff that I learned while I was, in volleyball, coaching as well as playing. And then this new nonprofit that I started 4 years ago, Koterra, same type of thing. So pulling together, what is the gap, identifying the gap, why do we need to do this? And then looking for the right people with the right skill sets and pulling them all together and aligning our mission.
So, that skill set of starting something, it sounds, you did the tiny homes and now you're dealing with concussions and brain health. That's something that really is a challenge getting nonprofits off the ground. So you've now done that multiple times. Talk a bit about some of the challenges that you've seen in getting things off the ground. We have a lot of people who have incredible ideas of how they want to give back to the world and help. What are some of the things that you did right as you went through that process?
I think in both cases for my nonprofits, I identified what I thought was a gap and there was a need that nobody was filling. And that was a local level. I wasn't looking across the nation for housing for veterans. It was more of where I was. Once I established the need, and the first thing I did was look to see, is there anyone else doing it? Because what we don't want is there's so many nonprofits that overlap, and then we're fighting for resources. So one of the things I did was I reached out I was an advocate in the state of Maryland for veterans, and I reached out to other organizations and I looked around to see, is there anything else being done like this? And there wasn't. So then I met with a couple of different people in my community, community leaders, as well as business leaders to see, am I on the right path? Is this something we can do? And amazingly, a bunch of people came together, and then we took that core. There was about 5 of us. 4 of them were veterans. And we took that core group and then we started meeting weekly to see what can we do? How can we do it? And my goal at that time was to get the buildings, to get the tiny homes funded for free. So we pulled together, again, looking at assets across the community. How can we do this successfully without a big chunk of money? And what we ended up doing was we pulled together the tech center at the high school, and they changed their curriculum. So every semester they would build a tiny home, and we would have the identified veteran who was going to get the tiny home, who would come and actually help them side by side in building the tiny house that they're going to live in. And that we did really well with that. And then we ended up putting them inside a state park, which is unheard of. And then they were able to get jobs there. And building that plan and having the plan based on what's available, capabilities that are out there, resources that we can move immediately on. Because I feel like with a nonprofit, if you're waiting for the funding, you're going to wait for a really long time. So if you're able to put together your plan without needing immediate funding, I was in a lucky position. I just did this as a volunteer. Nobody got paid in the entire organization. Everybody was just aligned on the mission, and we found the resources to do it. And the same thing with Koterra. It was pretty much the same thing.
And so, I think it's hard, right? People think that nonprofit work is easy. They have a great idea. They have a great passion, a bundle of energy. And what we frequently hear is everything's going to be great and easy once we get our 501c3 determination letter from the IRS. Now donations are tax deductible. Now we can get grants. Right. So you've certainly seen that that's not quite exactly the way that it works. And so take us through what you saw as some of the biggest challenges and hurdles to getting each of these organizations off the ground.
So yeah, the 501c3 is very important. And very interesting was when I filled out the 501c3 paperwork for the tiny homes, which was called Patriot Springs was the name of it. It got rejected multiple times. And, I had went to a lawyer to help me do it at the local community college. You can come in and sit down, and we did all of that stuff. And so you're right. It was like, once we get this, we're going to get funding, we're going to get funding. We finally got it approved. And once we got it approved, it was just something that we had in case people were going to start donating. Going after grants, when you have a couple of volunteers who have full-time jobs and you want them to start writing grants, they start burning out pretty quickly. So trying to find ways to bring in funding without having to rely on grants, I think is one of the things that can bring faster success. When you're going out and your entire objective is to get grant money, it's important. And I believe it comes at a later stage. I believe once you're established as a business for like a year or a year and a half, then you go after the grants. Some of them you can't even get unless you've been in business for 3 years. So, and I think that's a good thing, because with grants comes a lot more oversight, a lot more paperwork, which means you need staff, which means you need more money to pay people. And it's like you said, it's not the end all be all. And then for Koterra, when we submitted our 501c3, we got it approved immediately. And we need to have it, because when people, I would say 50% of the people that donate to us want to use it as a tax write-off. The other 50% don't. They don't care. They just want to give to the mission. They just, here you go. I want to donate to what you guys are doing. So it is important. I wanted to step back a little bit about Koterra, because I was talking a lot about Patriot Springs, but the way Koterra started was a funny story, actually. I was getting ready to go up to brief the state, Maryland, about veterans' health and veterans' homelessness. And I had printed off the wrong papers, and I sent it to Staples at my local store to go pick it up. It was in the evening the night before, so it was like 8:30. I get in there and they're like, we'll redo it. Go sit at the table. We'll tell you when it's ready. And then this man comes in, and he comes walking in, and he's all angry. And they tell him his business card is wrong. He goes and sits down with me. He sees my paperwork and says, hey, I'm a veteran. And I was like, oh. And then he hands me his card, and he said, do you see a typo on my business card? And I said, absolutely. And then he said, tell me about your organization. And it turned out it was the CEO of the Retired NFL Players Association. And so he was sitting next to me, and we were in the same small town and never knew each other. And then he said, would you come up and would you be part of my congressional reception? We're hosting up at the Rayburn building for the vice president. And 75 people are invited to talk about brain health. And I would like you to come and represent the veterans. And I was like, okay. So 3 weeks later, I show up at the Rayburn building and I walk in, and there's all these guys in their brown jackets, and it was a bunch of Hall of Famers. And I spoke about veterans and brain injury and repetitive brain injury right there alongside the NFL. And at that point, we were going to go forward together to try and do something, which we ended up not going together. But 2 of those guys are still on my board of directors. So
yeah, the issue of brain health is so big now, not only in football but in all of the sports, and really military as well, as you know. I think that one of the things that's interesting when you talk about that is the alignment of the issues and the concerns between sports and military, right? The athletes and the veterans and even current military that are doing things. So when you were at that congressional hearing, how did they sort of separate those? Did they have you presenting a different perspective, and what were you able to learn from the athletes that helped you with the work that you're doing now?
So it was a congressional reception, and I spoke after an NFL physician spoke about repetitive brain injuries in the NFL and what it was doing, and also how some of the guys that played before the 2000s don't have health insurance and they're not getting the help that they needed. Here they are, we know they have brain injuries, and we know they're having a lot worse as they get older, and they don't have, the health insurance that they needed. So I came right after that speech. And when I came up, I talked about veterans, how they have the VA to provide services to them, but most of them won't go there anymore because the services that they're getting are not helping them. And they can't necessarily go out on their own and get treatment either, because they don't have, they have the VA at that time, they had the VA health support. So there was a little bit of right there up front, like they both, 2 groups that have traumatic brain injuries, multiple brain injuries, and all the other symptoms that go along with it, including depression, anxiety, paranoia, suicide, thoughts, and yet both of them are restrained from getting the help that they think they need. So, or that we believe they needed. So I got up and spoke a little bit about that and how we believe that hyperbaric oxygen was, the core of healing. And that time we believed that, it could heal your brain. And now there's proof that it can heal your brain. And so kind of aligning with athletes across the board, I know every HBOT facility that is a partner of mine where I send veterans to are also doing athletes side by side. So I had 2 patients go through my first clinic here, and both of them went through with athletes, professional athletes. So we had 1 veteran and 1 athlete go through the program together. So very similar, very similar.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that's really interesting, and you've seen it in the work that you do, continually there are new proposed, I'll put in quotes, healing options that are out there. And people have come up with lots of, as I say, potions and lotions and edibles and other things that are supposed to help with this. Many of them are untested at all, or certainly unproven, even if they've had some limited success, right, in specific cases.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some very interesting technologies that are out there. You talked about HBOT. What are some of the other technologies that you have seen recently that you think provide hope for the athletes and the military?
Well, I can tell you, I was at the Brain Health Conference here in Tampa a while ago with the Parkman Foundation. And while I was there, I walked away. I literally walked out and called a bunch of people and said, for the first time, I feel hopeful. I'm getting goosebumps right now just saying it. I feel hopeful. We are so close. The modalities that I heard about, some I knew about, a lot of them I knew about, but I didn't know enough about, and I still don't. But the modalities that are out there to actually heal a brain, which means we're also going to heal some PTS, the paranoia, all the things that go with it, is so exciting. So we talk about the psychedelics. I do believe there's a place for psychedelics. I am not a doctor, so I want to say that right up front at all. I do believe it's a good reset. I deal with a lot of special forces. Most of my patients are special forces who've had been in 20, 25, 30 years. I just had a Navy SEAL. He's been in 41 years. So psychedelics, there's a place. The other modalities that I see successful is TMS, stimulating the brain, obviously HBOT. I also think there's the red light laser therapy, I think is definitely something that is helpful. And the cool thing is, and I got approached by a company from Finland who has a nasal spray that on the sidelines of football games and stuff you can give to decrease the inflammation immediately if there's a bad hit or something. So the preventative stuff, the on-the-spot stuff, and then the long-term care, we're building out these protocols that's going to make a huge difference in the future. And I think we're really, really close right now. Yes, a lot of it has not been tested to the standards of the pharmaceutical industry by the FDA, but a lot of the successes that we're seeing, and as a community, I think all the brain health people involved that I've met and read about, as a community, we're willing to share this data that we do have. We're willing to share that, this worked, this didn't work. And that's incredible because we're not behind a closed door like a pharmaceutical company and just sitting here for 7-8 years doing this testing and then going to get approval. And then it's our prescription. This is something different. I think this is a movement and it's pretty exciting.
Well, you mentioned so many different types of things. I think one of the things that is, as you said, provides hope. While we were at that conference and listening to those presentations, there's people working very hard to find ways to make a difference, right? And I always say we don't talk about a cure because there's no evidence that you can reverse CTE or that you can necessarily sort of restore the physical damage that may have been done. But certainly there are different therapies that can help provide significant symptom relief. There are things that can get rid of, some of the nasty side effects and things that are going on through that process. So it's exciting to see, one day maybe there will be evidence that we can actually reverse the damage.
Yeah.
I think we're still quite a long way away from that, and it's encouraging to see that people are able to get help. So as you look ahead for Koterra now, we're sitting here recording today. What are some of the things that you see happening over the next 12 to 24 months?
For Koterra specifically?
Yeah.
So over the next 12 to 14 months and on, our goal is we provide veterans in need come to us, and then we determine based on their need and what their availability is. I have partners across the United States that have facilities that do HBOT, that run our protocols that are based on a 2019 Nobel Prize winning science. So it's multiple modalities when you're there. I have one partner up in, it's called Aviv Clinics up in the Villages here, where you go and stay for 90 days. We've just had a couple of veterans go through that program, extremely successful. The blood flow, we do so much testing. So the blood flow before and after in the brain is incredible. So that'll continue. We'll be continuing and that research that's going on there is being used as part of a larger pool to actually prove that the modalities do work and heal. So they have a lot of research data that they've pulled from Israel, UAE, as well as here. So working with them. And then we have some other locations across the country, Aurelius in Pennsylvania, Dr. Joe Maroon, who's doing a lot with brain health. It's one of his facilities. We've been sending veterans up there. Those are veterans that can only do 6 to 12 week sessions due to their life situation. So we send them there. We have a few places in Arizona, Texas, Colorado. So depending on where the veteran is and what they need, we try and get them into one of these. And we're trying to make sure that the modalities are similar, the protocols are the same, and the level of oxygen, so that we can gather this data to help further prove that it's actually working. Right now at Koterra, it's just me. I have a couple of volunteers, and we've been able to raise money. We had the winner of Survivor 43. He donated to us. He found out about us. I reached out to him after he won and said he was going to donate $1 million to brain health. We talked, and he's now one of our donors, and he's one of our advisors on our board, Mike Gabler. And he's continuing to help us as any way that he can. He divided that $1 million up into 10 organizations in the United States, and we were one of the 10, and he's considered a partner of ours as well. And he's a doctor, actually. So he's been helping out with us. But as we move forward as Koterra, we're going to continue to get those veterans and get them into some sort of help for them, even if it's just to minimize the symptoms that they're going through. But preferably, we're going to actually help them heal, whether it's mental, physical, or emotional. We look at it as the whole body, the whole soul, and we're pretty excited about what's coming up for us. The veterans right now. Thing is, right now we have 19 veterans on our waiting list. So trying to get 19 veterans into programs with little or no money, but we've been able to. We've done 7 this year. So hopefully we can get some more donations.
Well, Patti, I appreciate you sharing all of your insight. You've done an amazing job getting this off the ground, and we applaud you in the work that you're doing. It makes a difference in so many lives. And even though a lot of the focus of the work you're doing is on the military, right, that applies to so many other groups and things that you're going to find out through the work that you're doing, and the research is very transferable, whether it's to sports, whether it's to domestic violence, whether it's to any other types of people with brain injuries. So thank you for leading that charge and for taking the time to share that with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
So we want to end on sort of a little bit of a fun note, and we'll turn away from the brain health and injuries, and we're going to put you on the spot here, and we're going to use our superpowers to appoint you as commissioner of a sport. So tell us what sport you would choose.
I think I'm going to choose baseball.
Okay, so Rob Manfred is now out on the street, and you're taking over control of the league. So tell us what you would like to see differently. What's one change that you would like to make?
I want to make a change with pitchers. I want them to have to stay in and pitch. I don't want them to be able to be pulled out. I want them to have to go through at least 5 or 6 innings.
So starting pitchers have to pitch 5 or 6 innings, regardless of how bad they're getting beat up and battered. And you don't like these sort of bullpen games where everybody's coming in and pitching.
It's a different game. It's a different game. Once you get to the bullpen part of it, it becomes a different game. So I know it's a different game if you leave them in too, but it's just kind of frustrating to watch it.
Who's your team, Patti?
My daughter works for the Yankees, so
okay.
I'm a Yankees fan.
There we go. Well, it's
embarrassed about that this year, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see, because baseball, probably more than a lot of the other sports, has really been impacted. The on-field game, I feel, has been impacted more than most of the other sports by the metrics and analytics and evaluation of all of these different numbers and strategies. It feels like in many of the other sports, it has a bit of an influence in some of the strategies. You can see it in the NFL and football, and you see it in other sports. But it feels like for baseball, that's been the most drastic of the sports.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Definitely agree. And whether or not they're applying the metrics correctly or not, who knows? But it's definitely a heavy part of the game.
Well, and it always has been, right? That's always been one of the attractions of baseball, is that you've got all of the statistics. I remember even as a young boy, I used to track it manually on just a lined sheet of notebook paper, and, and all of the things that you can now search and research and things like that. It was fun growing up as a Brewer fan. So they didn't quite get it done against the Dodgers this year, but yeah. So thank you so much for being with us, Patti. We really appreciate that. And for all of our viewers and listeners, we appreciate you taking time to join us on the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. This is your host, Roy Kessel, signing off. Please remember to live generously. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.